Here we go now.
Hello, Dr. Ross Walker. I'd like to talk to you about a very, very exciting product. This is ubiquinol. I'm going to talk about the cardiovascular benefits and beyond, because really this is the next generation of coenzyme Q10. I'll explain to you what it is as we talk. But firstly, what I want to talk to you about is a thing called the mitochondria. Now, what is the mitochondria? The mitochondria is the fuel pack of the cell. This is what gives the cell energy. So it doesn't matter what sort of flash car you drive. If the car doesn't have some sort of energy source, the car doesn't move. And in the same way, if your cells don't have the energy coming from this mitochondria, your cells don't move and your cells don't work. So it's important, especially as we get older, to maintain high quality energy in our body. Now, ubiquinol, which is the active version of coenzyme Q10, drives the mitochondria. It's one of the major drivers of your mitochondrial function, and it gives you high quality energy. So you'll see on this slide the ubiquinol going to ATP. ATP is the unit of energy in the body. Now just let me explain to you a little bit about ubiquinol. It's a fat-soluble vitamin-like substance, and it really has two functions. One, it promotes energy, as I've said, but two, it acts as a very, very powerful antioxidant. It's in every cell in the body. And the point is, you'll say, well, look, if I eat a good diet, why do I need to supplement? Well, in the case of ubiquinol, yes, you can get all the ubiquinol you need from your food. You can get 100 milligrams of ubiquinol if you have 10 kilos a day of broccoli. If you have 1.6 kilos a day of sardines, that'd be fun. Or 3 kilos a day of beef. That's how you get ubiquinol. Or you can swallow it in a pill. Now, ubiquinol is made by Canica. Canica have a patent on ubiquinol around the world, and it comes from yeast fermentation. Now, here's the problem with ubiquinol. As you age, and 30 is the peak of your life, and for anyone listening to this, unfortunately, our body was designed to wander around a jungle with a spear for 30, 40 years, have your head ripped off by a saber-toothed tiger or die of some infection. We weren't designed to go really past about the age of 40. So 30 is the peak of your life, and from there you start developing osteoporosis, what we call sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle mass. So things don't work as well. No high-performance athlete is as good in their 30s as they were in their 20s because they've hit the peak of their life. When you hit 50, there's an enzyme called diaphorase that metabolizes inactive CoQ10, so what you'd get if you took an old supplement like ubiquinone, to active ubiquinol. And so even if you took CoQ10 in the old supplement form, you're not getting the same amount of ubiquinol in the mitochondria, and therefore you're not getting the same amount of energy. And you can see here clearly on this slide how ubiquinol decreases as we get older. And as you get towards 80, there's probably not too many people at that age listening to this talk today, but you can see a significant reduction in the ubiquinol levels in your cells as you age. And some of the reasons why ubiquinol declines with age is, firstly, as I've said, you lose the enzyme that gives you that ubiquinol, but there's increased metabolic demand. So our cells have to work towards keeping things working. And so therefore, as you get older and things start to degenerate, you're putting a whole lot of energy into maintaining cells that aren't working as well. So that increasing metabolic demand can deplete the ubiquinol in your mitochondria. Different diseases can certainly do that. Oxidative stress, which is just basically living in this society where you have the chronic stresses of living, the emotional stresses, the mental stresses, all the physical stresses, but also the stresses of pollution, the stresses of chronic irradiation. Many people are sitting in front of computers all day, as I'm sitting at the moment talking about this. Then obviously our diets, the Western diets, don't have a lot of CoQ10 in them, as I've demonstrated before. And then there are certain gene mutations, and now the very ubiquitous statin therapy. Many people are taking statin drugs to lower their cholesterol, such as Crestor or Lipitor. That depletes coenzyme Q10 as well. So what are the health benefits of ubiquinol? The health benefits are, firstly, ubiquinol supports normal cellular function in our heart, in our liver, in our kidney, in our brain. So it's good to have a good dose of ubiquinol running around those areas. It increases your energy. I take 150 milligrams of ubiquinol every day purely to give me energy. I'm not on a statin, so I use it just to give me energy because I'm getting older. Not that old, of course, but getting older. It gives you stamina. It's very good for sports. It helps with fertility for males, and it gives you, as I said, more energy. It's a fatigue fighter. That's the non-cardiovascular benefits. So let's look at, say, for example, stress management. What's the evidence there? This was a study where they gave people 100 milligrams of ubiquinol a day. I think that the dose should be about 150 milligrams, but they gave them 100 milligrams a day and found their job satisfaction score increased. Their physical complaint score decreased. The feeling of stress decreased when they were on ubiquinol. And then you look at chronic fatigue syndrome. Probably about 10% of society don't have as good a mitochondrial function as everyone else. And if those people, say, for example, get glandular fever in their 20s and 30s, they can often develop this chronic fatigue syndrome. There are many other causes of this. But people who had chronic fatigue syndrome also have disrupted sleep. They don't think as well. And this is showing that giving 150 milligrams of ubiquinol a day certainly improves sleep, certainly improves their ability to think. And this says if you lose weight, you'll have more energy. Why do you think they call it fatigue? And it shows that ubiquinol is very good at relieving fatigue. So they gave between 100 to 150 milligrams a day for 12 weeks to 71 healthy people who had mild fatigue and significantly improved their fatigue scores. And this shows again further studies to show that daily ubiquinol reduces daily life stresses and improves the quality of sleep. And again, this is just another further studies there. Now, sports nutrition. This found people who were given ubiquinol had better performance at sport. You can see the improvement after being 6 weeks of training and being given ubiquinol, 300 milligrams a day. And so what fits your busy schedule better, exercising for an hour a day or being dead for 24 hours a day? And that's why I said in a previous talk that exercise is the second best drug on the planet. And this again shows this was a study of exhaustive swimming. The more they're exposed to ubiquinol, the better their swimming scores were. But let's move on to the heart. We're talking really about ubiquinol and its benefits for cardiovascular disease. Now, if you're playing Trivial Pursuit, and the question is, what is the biggest organ in the body? The answer, the Trivial Pursuit answer, is the skin, but that's wrong. The biggest organ in the body is the endothelium, which is the single layer of cells that lines every blood vessel in your body. So in a 70-kilo man, there's about 1 trillion endothelial cells. As I said, it's the biggest organ in the body. It has the surface area of about 6 tennis courts, and it weighs more than the liver and the heart all put together. So ubiquinol actually gives you better endothelial function. What happens in the endothelium? It opens and closes based on the stimuli. So, for example, if you're under some sort of stress, the saber-toothed tiger's following you, you've got to open up your blood vessels, get good blood flow to your muscles. That's what your endothelium does. Then again, when you're in the middle of a deep sleep, the last thing you need is torrential blood flow to your muscles. The endothelium closes down. So if your endothelium is working well and ubiquinol supports endothelial function, those actions are all done so much better. As you can see here, when they looked at this flow-mediated dilatation, which is a good indication of endothelial function, when given ubiquinol, significant improvement in endothelial function there. And this is also looking at inflammation, because we know that inflammation is a key part of disease. Ubiquinol has a very good anti-inflammatory response, as you can see from this slide here. in people who are given 200 milligrams of ubiquinol. And this says to prevent a heart attack, take 1 aspirin every day, take it out for a run, take it to the gym, and then take it for a bike ride. Now, people who've had cardiac arrests have also been found to have low levels of CoQ10 in their bloodstream. So it's felt that people who are chronically low in coenzyme Q10 and therefore ubiquinol, which is the active version, are more prone to having things like cardiac arrest. Now, interestingly, when we're talking about cholesterol, this fellow's saying cholesterol is good for you, it clogs your veins so you don't bleed as much when you get a cut. No, I don't think so. We've all heard about the good and bad cholesterol. HDL is good because it takes the fat out of the arteries and takes it back to the liver where it's broken down. LDL is bad because it puts fat into your arteries. That's very simplistic, and it's simplistic nonsense. Because here, when you look at people who've had heart disease, their cholesterol levels are pretty similar to people who haven't had heart disease. So what's the difference? In fact, as we get older, especially as we get over 60, this study here shows that there is no association between high LDL cholesterol and heart disease. This was a study in the British Medical Journal that showed 68,000 people followed for 10 years. There was, over the age of 60, there was no link between LDL cholesterol and heart disease, but the higher your LDL over the age of 60, the longer you live, the less cancer, infectious disease and gastrointestinal disease you have with a higher LDL. So what is this all about? Why are we carrying on about LDL? Well, here's where size is important, because LDL is basically divided into small and large. HDL, small and large, and the larger the better. So if you have a lot of large LDL, that promotes healthy brain function, cell metabolism, bile salt metabolism, vitamin D metabolism, cholesterol metabolism. If you have small LDL, that puts fat in your arteries. If you have small HDL, that is pro-inflammatory. You don't want that. Large HDL pulls the fat out of your arteries. So you want to have more large LDL and large HDL. So for example, if your cholesterol is 7 and your triglycerides are low at say 0.7, but your HDL is 2.5, your doctor might want to put you on a statin. No. That's a very balanced profile because you've probably got more large LDL and large HDL. And this shows here, people who have the smallest LDL, you see the big orange thing that says 6.2 on it, they're people with a lot of small LDL have the highest rates for heart disease. 6 times higher rate for heart disease than people who have a lot of large LDL. And this shows that ubiquinol reduces your small LDL and makes it large. So when you have your cholesterol checked, you're not going to see much difference, but what you are going to do is have a healthier LDL cholesterol. And that's why if you've made it to 60 without heart disease, the LDL doesn't matter that much because it's probably all large because you haven't had your heart attack. Now, LDL is really important for people on statins. All of my patients who are prescribed Crestor, Lipitor, Zocor, Pravachol, one of those statin drugs, otherwise known as rosuvastatin, atorvastatin, simvastatin, pravastatin, what's happening is there's a direct effect on the muscles, on the mitochondria in the muscles, and you lose ubiquinol. So I give ubiquinol to all my patients who are taking a statin drug. Lipitor is the biggest selling drug in the world, and personally, I don't use it at all. Lipitor and Zocor are fat-soluble statins. I don't think they should be prescribed. I only use water-soluble statins, which are Crestor, rosuvastatin, or Pravachol, pravastatin. They're the only ones that I use, and I only use them in people who have a coronary calcium score above 100 or have already had a heart attack, a stent, or a bypass. So I don't even use Lipitor, and Lipitor is the biggest selling drug on the market, so therefore my colleagues obviously don't agree with me. And this study from the Annals of Internal Medicine looked at the benefits and the risks of statins, and it found that if you have a predicted risk of heart disease over 15% over 10 years, and that's people with a calcium score above 100 or people who've already had a heart attack, stent, or a bypass, then you'll get a benefit from statins. If it's below 15%, no benefit at all. So who should be prescribed statins? All people with vascular disease, all people with a calcium score above 100 between the ages of 50 to 70, predicted 10-year risk beyond 15%, and people who are statin tolerant. If someone rings me after having been on their statin for a few months and they just can't lift their arms because they've got so much muscle pain, they can't take a statin. It's only 10% of their management. But if they can take a statin under these circumstances, it's still good for them. But you don't use statins just because your cholesterol's high. And there's so many people who go to the doctor, oh, your cholesterol's high, here's a statin pill. That is wrong. It should not happen. So, and I want a load of those statins I read about that let you eat as many fat burgers as you like without getting a heart attack. If you believe that, you believe anything. That is biologic nonsense. So what do statins do? Statins reduce or inhibit one of the major enzymes in the production of cholesterol. But one of the problems with that is there's collateral damage because it also inhibits the metabolism of ubiquinol, the metabolism of vitamin K2, the metabolism of selenium. So that's why it's important to think about supplementing with these things. And this shows that statins directly reduce your coenzyme Q10 levels, thus my use of ubiquinol in this situation. A 45% reduction in CoQ10 levels in people who are given 80 milligrams a day of atorvastatin or Lipitor. And this shows again a meta-analysis putting a whole lot of studies together showing a significant reduction in CoQ10 levels in people on statins. And we know that the way statins cause the pains that you get when you're on them, which is about 20% of people, is by affecting the parts of the mitochondria where ubiquinol works. And they gave ubiquinol in a small dose. So I use much more than this, but this is 60 milligrams a day, but I use 150 milligrams a day. They gave it to people who had statin myopathy, who were getting muscle pain. They reduced their muscle pain, their muscle weakness, and increased their CoQ10 levels by about 50% with a small dose. So I think you use a bigger dose than that. And what about for people with heart failure? Now, I certainly use ubiquinol in all my patients with heart failure. And this is a study where they used just standard CoQ10 and still had about a 50% reduction in death and a 50% reduction in major adverse cardiac events such as heart attack, stroke, sudden death, just by giving people, this was 300 milligrams a day of CoQ10. And this says I eat cheap, greasy food so I can save my cardiologist bills in the future. Well, prevention, my friends, that's the most important thing. So CoQ10 levels are an independent predictor of death in people who have heart failure. And so what they found here is the lower your CoQ10 levels, the higher your death rate if you actually have heart failure. And this study here again showed that people who have the lowest CoQ10 levels have the most advanced heart failure. And this was a small study. This was not a randomized controlled trial, but this showed profound benefits in the pumping action of the heart, known as the ejection fraction, in people who were given ubiquinol and showed significant improvements. And this is actually a lot better than I get often with drug therapy, but I use the drugs in people with heart failure as well, but I supplement them with ubiquinol. But I have some people who for some reason just can't tolerate the drugs. They still do well with their heart failure and the ubiquinol. And this again shows that standard CoQ10 as opposed to ubiquinol, in the same doses, you get a much higher level of CoQ10 in your bloodstream by taking ubiquinol. And this shows again, people with heart failure, they have low rates of CoQ10 in their bloodstream. And just moving away from heart disease slightly is onto male fertility. And they looked at all of the parameters of male fertility with semen density, the motility of sperm, the morphology of sperm, all significantly improved by taking 200 milligrams a day of ubiquinol. Other clinical studies have shown improvement in diabetes, improvement in quality of life scores for elderly people, certainly improvement in some children with Down syndrome, fibromyalgia, autism, periodontitis, infertility. There's some work with Parkinson's as well. And this is a study where they gave CoQ10 to people and selenium, just elderly people who are otherwise well, and showed around a 50% reduction in death over supplementation over a 4-year period when they looked at them 10 years later. So what are my recommendations? My recommendations here, for people with heart failure, I give 300 milligrams a day of ubiquinol, statin therapy, or over the age of 50, 150 milligrams a day. To get the ubiquinol levels in the normal range in younger people, 100 milligrams a day is fine. optional healthy range if you're already there, and fertility anywhere between 150 to 300 milligrams a day. So I certainly believe in the use of ubiquinol. As I said, I take it myself for energy. I use it in all my patients with heart failure, all my patients with statins, all my patients where I want to improve all of the cardiac parameters. So to summarize, ubiquinol is the active version of CoQ10, and it can directly work in our body while the CoQ10 has to be converted into ubiquinol in order to work. So take the end product, which is the ubiquinol. As we age, the CoQ10 levels decline, and our ability to convert from ubiquinone to ubiquinol declines as well, which is why I always use the ubiquinol. And it's a very strong antioxidant, which is good for a number of other diseases. And also, as you get older, you tend to get more fatigue. Overtraining can affect the body, so ubiquinol is a great help there. And there's strong evidence for a variety of conditions that I've already mentioned: cardiac failure, statin therapy, where ubiquinol is very useful. So just like the lemmings here going down the hill, this little lemming at the back is thinking outside the square. He's not going to commit suicide like the rest of his mates. I advise you all to think outside the square, and who knows what will happen. Thank you very much for your attention.